So even the title WOW is not the name of the book solely. WOW is an acronym using the first letters of the actual title of the book. So to answer your question, I think poetry is available at all ages. We have Dr. What was his name? Dr. Seuss, who wrote about the Cat in the Hat or Green Eggs and Ham. There's all poetry in there. But it can get very elite, and there's classical Shakespearean poetry. I was actually raised on writings by renowned poets, Walt Whitman, and you know, there are some that are very famous, like Invictus is one very well-known poem. There's a poem called If. There are classical poems that come out of educated, again, I said elite, but often Western academic worlds. And then there's just fun poetry. There's the beatniks. There's a whole variety of generations of writers. And now we have hip hop. I mean, my God, if that's not poetry, I don't know it is. Rhyming. So I'm not sure that I can say it's only for one generation. But this particular collection of poems has both playful, kind of fun, as well as more serious and dramatic, even political. I try not to do too much politics, but it's hard to get around.
Okay. Well, I know definitely, well, there's actually two that actually caught my attention. And one of them was called Usher In. And when I started to read that, I was like, Usher In, it automatically brought me into church. And then started to read the people in there, the celebrities. So what made you want to choose a certain celebrity in Usher In?
Well, in Usher In, and that's the first poem, which is the reason why it's called Usher In, and it even has a photo of a kind of landscape staircase, a stairway made out of just pieces of wood. It's called Usher In as part of welcoming the reader. It has a list of dedications because most of these poems are dedicated to, I believe art should have a reach. It should be about someone, something, and I do a lot of art that is dedicated. It has more purpose for me. So in Usher In, there are several people that were lost. I say lost in space, that in the last year died. And so some of those names are here: Ms. Franklin, Aretha Franklin, Winnie Mandela, Hugh Masekela, John McCain. And as part of welcoming the reader, that list of dedication indicates that it's for people who've, or dedicated to people who we've lost in space, that we all probably know someone who has passed away.
Definitely. Okay, so another one that I pretty much enjoy, and it kind of, make me visualize Jesus.
Oh.
And that particular one is Walking on Wine. And I was thinking of walking on water. So if you can please explain that one and, let us know more about that, because that was my vision of walking on water with Jesus. Keep your eyes on Jesus and you'll get through.
Okay.
And relating it to walking on wine, and knowing we had wine and bread. So if you can, kind of tell us about that poetry.
Lovely. I think this is the the centerpiece, and so I thank you for asking that question. The title of the book is Walking on Wine, Wow Poems. The poem that you're talking about is the first one. It comes up, I'll just recite it because it's only 2 lines. It says, walking on wine is wavier than water, all sloshy, sloppy, sweet, is firewalk on hellish road, skipping down the street. So this poem is about the life that I've been led to walk in many instances in different countries, in my own country, in my neighborhoods. I walk a lot, It is one of the healthiest things that I've ever done. I do it almost daily. It's encouraged me to not only keep an animal. I usually have a dog that I walk, my own puppy, but it also keeps me from walking. Calms me down. It has been a way for me to keep from being unhealthy, if you will. We live in a world that's very sedentary,
Yeah.
where people sit down, they eat, and they sit in front of the TV, and then they gain weight, and then they feel bad, and it's a vicious cycle. So I've been walking since, of course, since I was a toddler, but somewhere along the line, and I think it was when I was in college, I learned to run. I actually used to jog. As I've aged and gotten more careful about how I use my body, I still can walk several miles, and I tend to do that almost daily. It keeps me also from being caught up in the problems, the woes of our world. We have regular, frequent news reports of difficulties, violence, political debates that make people angry, reasons to get mad or depressed. But walking, so for instance, today I walked, I saw butterflies, I saw birds, flowers. Everywhere I walked, I saw the hint of God loving me, loving my surroundings. And it also keeps me from, which is the other part of this title, it also keeps me from wanting to take something to make me feel better. Walking, I walk, and these endorphins, the way I understand it, get released in my brain, which make me high. So walking on wine is also that metaphor of Jesus not only teaching his disciples that they can overcome whatever's a burden and might sink them. You know, how many people do you know that can actually walk on water?
No, but I wish I could. That's, brain sight to me. I can keep my eyes. But I do that at school, though. For my cane of going from building to building,
Okay.
just have to keep walking and keep the faith. And even though can't see physically, but spiritually, just keep talking of getting through the day. So that's why I like walking online, because I can relate to it.
Exactly. It's a miracle. It is walking in your miracle. Or as I prefer to, and one aspect of this, you were talking about walking around school, that God can move obstacles. He can, our God, my God, can help me to stand when everyone else is, there's a famous poem that says, if you can keep it's the name of the poem is if you can keep your head about you when all others are, falling on the floor, screaming, I don't know what to do. If you can keep your head about you, then you'll become what I think is the ultimate of what, our Creator had in mind. And that was someone who can contain themselves and be at peace and be in control of our own destiny. So I'll stop there.
Okay. So out of all of your work, especially with this particular project, which poetry or which one really kind of relates to you, or which one you like the most?
Wow, which one do I like the most? That's a very difficult question because I'm not sure I don't like any of them. I certainly didn't publish everything that I sometimes write things and I'm mad. I used to do that. I used to write mad poetry, really angry, like, I'll curse you, I hate you. But I now write about healing, mostly. I think that we don't live in a perfect world on purpose. It has led me to not only write poetry, but to create something I call the Peace Disc, which is about confronting and being okay and being at peace with whatever problem, obstacle that comes along. That's the goal.
Yeah.
If you have a faith, you can rely on that faith to get you through that obstacle. And for me, that obstacle has been all kinds of things, from health to economic circumstances to being in foreign countries where I didn't either know people very well or had to rely on my language skills, to being in danger, to being in all kinds of, horrific or difficult circumstances. And I started doing some of this as a way to send a message to people I call my children. And those, I have to say, are not always biologically determined, but people, for instance, one of my favorite poems in here is, and I have to find it, is dedicated to, let's see, it's a really short poem. It's dedicated to, I'm going to do a search for it. It's dedicated to children, but not just any children. It's dedicated to children who I call my children, who were caught up in the world of cyberspace. Because I've worked, at one point I worked in computer development, I believe that I was led to leave crumbs, if you will, breadcrumbs. There are all kind of things on the internet now, they call them cookies. So in my spirit, I believe there are cookies in there, there are breadcrumbs for folks who are caught in the world of an invisible. I mean, here you are talking about being sight impaired, but none of us can actually point to the internet and say, this is what it is. Cyberspace is above the physical world that we're in. Mm-hmm. So that we have products, we have material in there that if the building is demolished, like KFC, that there's still records in cyberspace of that building. There are pictures, there's information. So I wrote this poem, and it's called From. That's all it's called, From.
Okay.
And it's dedicated to, and I even put also sent by, what I call blue computer kids, and blue being about being depressed. So there's a lot of mental health issues in our world. The poem just says, now this is real poetry. Because
okay, we ready.
it's not the kind of art that immediately makes sense.
Okay.
The poem goes, saw, D2, re, are, we, eating, see, we were, we are awesome, 2, was we were, 22, E, were, E, we, E2, we were, E232, were, aware, 2, we, 2, were, 3, were, E22, E2, re, E22, E2, were, we. That poem, which sounds a little like Jaws maybe to you,
Yes.
is was actually appeared on, now this is going to sound like a miracle, it appeared in my text message one day. It was forwarded to my cousin. She wrote me back, she said, what's wrong with your phone? I said, I don't know. I looked on my phone and there's this poem. I hadn't typed it, so that's why the poem is called From, because I don't really know where it came from. But it, as I read over it and looked at it, there are some words I recognize aside from we and were. D2, R2D2. I used to say, I'm R2D2's mom. There is the word we are awesome. And then it keeps doing these numbers, 2, 3, 2, 3. So I looked in the Bible, and I noticed that Noah's Ark, he welcomes people and animals by 2s and 3s. A lot of people think it's just 2s. There's another important moment where Jesus says, and I'm not sure if it's just Jesus, but or which book in the Bible, but Jesus said, wherever 2 or more are gathered together, 2 or 3, that God is there also. So that's one of my favorite poems because it speaks to young people and the madness that they're going through in adapting to new technologies and environments. There's so much to try to understand in a world that is a little wonky.
Yeah.
And sometimes outrageous. But I think that if I had an explanation as we wrap up, We're living in a hot world. If you're in a place that's hot and you're getting hotter, you can tell that not only are you sweating, but people tend to get mad. So it's part of my effort to bring together an understanding that we can pray our way, that we have miracles around us, that God is with us where two or more are gathered together. You can get with people on the internet, which is the good news. You don't have to if you're in your house by yourself. You can get on the phone. You can get on an app. You can connect with people, and you can certainly find your way out of the maze that is sometimes harrowing nowadays.
Yeah.
Wow. There you go.
But that's the name.
That's the name. That's the name. It's one of my favorite expressions, and you know, if I had to say, it was a minister, a woman I was traveling with in Africa, who said it all the time. She said it so often because everywhere we looked around us, every place we went was so unusual compared to where we come from. In many cases, it was about the beauty that we saw in people, in food, in not only the animals, which people always associate Africa with safari, but also in what the humans had learned to do that we were just not familiar with. She said it all the time. She was like, wow, look at this, wow. So it became a mantra almost for me. I think we need mantras in today's world to get us through the daily difficulties. We need statements, whether it's a tune in the music. I think I've talked to you about rap music being kind of, to me, I think it's a meditation and a chant, much like Japanese prayers. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho. People chant that all day to keep their minds clear. So I think we all need mantras, and that's what I'm hoping to build is, or to give to others is a thought or a system for surviving this very unusual and new